This week's Pilch Point with Avram Pilch is proudly powered by PureVPN. When you're using the internet, whether it be on your computer or your phone, you can't necessarily trust the things you're using. People might be watching what you're doing. It could be Facebook or Google. It could be your ISP. It could be an app like TuTalk. Any of them can be watching your behavior, but with a product like PureVPN, you get some added protection. You get obfuscation of your browsing history. In some cases, you can even encrypt data and your browsing history. And right now, PureVPN is, as they tend to for our viewers, running a deal. If you sign up for a couple of years subscription, you can get the service for as low as $1.88 a month, and that's a great deal. And you can find out about all of the discounts that are available right now, and get a free trial of the service by going to pilchpoint.live/purevpn. So it's the end of the year, Avram.
It's also the end of the decade.
Indeed it is, which is crazy to think. In just a couple of days,
it went by so
20s.
fast.
Indeed. Yeah, it's really weird to think that we've been doing this show in just a couple of days. We will have been doing it in 3 decades.
Wow. Crazy time.
Uh-huh.
So, wow, time really flies. So, it just seems to me like decades, maybe it's just because I'm not as in touch with like youth culture and popular culture as I was when I was younger. But it just seems like the zeros and the tens didn't really have like a style and character like the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Sure. Other than maybe the Roaring 20s.
What is the...
But that, right. That's a...
But I mean...
That decade is its own special thing.
What I mean is like almost every decade from the 20s through 2000, you could sort of say there was something that's symbolic of it. Like, the Roaring 20s, you have flappers and, excess, and then the 30s, the Great Depression, 40s, war, 50s, a certain... anyway, point is... I don't know. I can't, I don't know. Like, I know a lot of people are like, yeah, I want to listen to some 80s music. I don't know. Are there going to be people who are going to be like, give me some 10s music. Give me Old Town Road. Anyway. So anyway, a lot has changed in the world of technology in the last 10 years. And at Tom's Hardware, we put up an article on Friday about the most influential tech products of the 2010s. And, here's a little taste of it. So one thing we found really influential was AMD's first Ryzen chip, the Ryzen 1800X, really brought AMD back into being a serious competitor in CPUs, where it was just kind of only making bargain basement types of chips for a long time.
Yeah.
And Ryzen actually put it in direct competition with Intel's fastest chips. And it's been so when the Ryzen 7 1800X debuted in 2017, and it had 8 cores and 16 threads, and it was like half the price of what you would pay for something with that much multitasking from Intel. It really made a dent, and now we obviously see just tremendous growth for AMD. Another thing, of course, you'll forgive my continuous...
Their stock is through the roof since the Ryzen chips.
Yep, that is, and in a lot of ways they're ahead of Intel now. They have 7 nanometer process. Mm-hmm. Intel can't even produce 10 nanometer at scale. So obviously I'm we all know I'm a big fan of the Raspberry Pi. That came out in 2012, and I think was a huge influence. It's been a very influential product in all of its iterations. It's really inspired and really, given a huge boost to the maker movement, to people building things like robots and home IoT devices, to kids learning how to program and things like that, and to what we expect from a cheap computer and a small single board computer. For $35, you can get a really, really powerful device in the Raspberry Pi 4, and you can use it for everything from surfing the web, which is not really the best use of it, to using to building a security camera, a robot, a web server. So that's obviously a very influential product and often copied. Another thing that really came to life in the last 10 years is variable refresh monitors. It was, in 2013, NVIDIA first introduced G-Sync, which was closely followed by AMD's FreeSync. And now we generally call the whole thing adaptive sync. But the idea of having your video card synchronized to your monitor's refresh rate, so that you don't have screen tearing, is very mainstream now. And 10 years ago, who would have thunk of it? Another one of my favorite, most influential products, and it's unfortunate to me that even 6 years after its release, it's still not as widespread as it should be. But USB Type C is definitely one of the most influential products of the tens. Coming up with a universal, with a way to do USB that carries 100 watts of power and is reversible, and could just do so many things. That's obviously made for big changes in the industry, but it's still shocking how many products don't have Type C on them. Another thing that was really other product that was really influential in the tens is the Microsoft Surface. Whether you want to talk about the original Surface that was running not real Windows RT, or the Surface Pro, the fact is Surface inspired, a whole form factor, a whole bunch of imitators trying to have a tablet with a lightweight keyboard cover, including Apple's iPad Pro. So that has been an extremely influential product.
In the studio right now, there are two of them.
Exactly. So, you think about things that are, what are some of the products that really stand out to you, Scott? That really stand out to you as having sort of changed the industry?
When you mentioned this at the beginning of the show, I had not looked at the list yet, and the first thing that came to mind for me was USB-C. So I'm definitely with Andrew on that one, because I see his name on that one on the list now. I definitely 100% agree on that one. I think not just the fact that it's way easier to plug something in, right? Which of course it is, but I think that's a bonus. No more do you have the situation where you only get it on the third try, which is, it's going to ruin a lot of memes, but that's. But the more universal nature of it, it's not micro on some things and full size on other things, and A on this and B on that. Nope, everything's C, and I think that's a really great idea. You can run video over it and all kinds of stuff. But I think the wider variety of hardware, right? It used to be, whether that be, the Surface technology, the Surface devices. Somebody's unhappy, huh?
Sorry.
I hear somebody unhappy in the background. Whether that be the Surface devices adjusting the overall landscape of computers, or AMD coming out of their slump from their their inability to transition from flip phones and feature phones to smartphone processors. They seem to take a full decade to come out of that. The wider variety of hardware. You've got everything from your traditional big, powerful, beefy gaming desktops and laptops all the way down to the Raspberry Pi and the Arduino. And they're readily available. No longer do you have to be like an oddball consumer to go hunting for that powerful gaming laptop. It used to be a real pain. This time last decade, if we were talking about this in 2009, it wasn't that easy for a regular consumer to hunt down a powerful, beefy gaming laptop. But today, you can get them at Walmart. You know what I mean? I just think the variety of hardware that has come out of this decade has been probably the biggest influence. And I think that has to do with the technology getting smaller, right? We've got so much stuff that's been able to get smaller and more powerful in a smaller piece. So, miniaturization might be my thing for the decade. That might be the biggest technology now that I think it out.
Yeah. I mean, if you take that trend and you extend it, think about even now, while they're readily available, gaming laptops are still fairly heavy, and you can't actually game on them unplugged. Usually, the video card throttles, and you can't really play just on battery power. You could use it as a computer, but it's usually integrated graphics or something when you're on battery power. So, that to me says like that's the next step is, can you actually play wirelessly? Can you actually play unplugged? And that I think requires some advances in terms of either better integrated graphics or more power efficient discrete.
Yeah.
I can see that we're not going to really, battery technology is not going to provide the solution. It's going to have to be power efficiency.
Sure. And the other thing that I think is going to be the technological takeaway from the 2010s is going to be virtualization. Whether it be the idea of cloud computing and how easy virtualization has become for software developers in the cloud to be able to go to Azure and say, new web service for computers with a load balancer. Walk away, and 8 minutes later, it's ready to publish to. That's crazy. And the fact that you can scale that machine from 1 core to 16 core in about 3 minutes, that's insane. And when Bill Gates and Jerry Seinfeld were walking out of the mall with a pair of shoes, and somebody said, "To the cloud," I know that this isn't what they were talking about. But I think if you look at how many things it has made possible, Project xCloud and Google Stadia and things like that on the gaming side, that ability to take some of the load off of the computer and put it somewhere else. We talked to a company at Collision this year that was doing something similar, but not really, for VR and AR, where they were kind of offloading some of the rendering so that the hardware didn't have to be as beefy in a headset. Just the idea of virtualization, the ability to push stuff, hard stuff off site, and be able to do it remotely and just push the results back down. I think that'll be one of the takeaways for this decade. So, I know obviously those three are not going to be your whole list, right, Avram? Your mic's not on.
Oh, sorry, I was
No worries.
trying to mute out the Bluetooth running.
I gotcha.
If you go to tomshardware.com, um, on our homepage, you'll see a list of the most influential products of the 2010s, and you will also see. I'll just put in a pitch for this because it's very influential to me. A list of the best Raspberry Pi projects of 2019,
Oh,
which has a lot of fun stuff, including my favorite, a robotic hand that you can control from another room by using a glove. Um,
nice.
so anyway, so check all that out on tomshardware.com. Also, coming up this week, the worst products of the 2010s.
Oh, I can't wait for that one.
Yes. Do you have any suggestions for a late edition? I can add. I'll be probably adding more to the list tonight and tomorrow to the worst list.
You know, let me get through the show. Let my mind get back onto thinking about things. Because I was prepared for the first
Yeah.
question. I wasn't prepared for the second one.
Okay. Got it.
I prepped myself for
If we
that.
have anybody in the chat, room, I definitely ask if you have any worst products of the last deck of the 2010s that you would like to suggest. Worst tech products.
Sure. Well, that I'm looking forward to that one because sometimes Schadenfreude can be fun.
Indeed.
From a personal perspective, it doesn't really quite match the caliber that we're looking for, and I can definitely appreciate that. But from a personal perspective, this damn LED strip that has owned my life for the last 5.5 weeks. I know that's not
a
the
late
caliber
decade
we're
in.
talking about, but what a pain in the butt that thing's been. Anyway, as always, Avram, I appreciate it. Hopefully, you'll have a good New Year this week, and I will see you shortly in Las Vegas.